welcome to episode 3 of Lost in Translation here at the WCTV studios in Wilmington, Massachusetts. I'm Sam Perkins with Bobby Martin. Bobby, how are you doing today?
Sam the man, always good to be back. Taking into consideration everything that's been going on for the past couple of days, I found myself maintaining.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not doing well. I really... Like it is like an obsession where I keep picturing my kids in this situation, and it's horrifying. And every time I read something new, it's like my brain goes to my two kids being in this situation, and I keep going back and forth between, like, I feel such horror and disgust and just overwhelming sadness and guilt, and or overwhelming sadness and horror and grief. And feeling like, on the one hand, I'll feel like, yes, I should feel this grief because this is happening in our country and we keep not doing anything about it. And the fact that children being murdered in a school, it's up to 19 right now. And the number that keeps not being released is it's 19 dead, but there were 38 kids shot. It's like they're not, the authorities in Texas, the politicians, they're still trying to, like, soften it a little bit and not let on for how terrible. 38 kids shot and 19 of them dead. And that this is we had Columbine. We've had so many school shootings. And then we had Newtown, the Sandy Hook school, that was chilled, like young kids. Pittsburgh. And so many others. And that each one of these is not prompting immediate change is just, it's horrifying. So I keep feeling like, just horror and sadness and grief. And I feel part of me will be like, yes, I should feel this. I should be in this because I should not have the luxury, that we shouldn't have the luxury of being able to forget about it. But then the other part of me feels like, what right do I have to be in that guilt when I'm not one of those parents? That I still get to go home to my kids. And it's this back and forth, and it's I don't know how you're handling it. You know, you are further along in fatherhood than I am. Your kids are older than mine, but like I don't know. You know,
I think that guilt. I feel none. I'm not a big guilt guy, but what happened absolutely touches every parent. It's absolutely tragic. But here's the thing. What I'm looking at is politicians. I'm looking at Beto O'Rourke, and I'm watching. That they're having a press conference, and he's walking up there, and he's talking to whomever it was. Maybe it was the governor of Texas, and I'm saying to myself, there's nothing going to be accomplished right now. You can't do that there. Let the parents grieve. It's okay to feel emotional about it. I think everybody should feel emotional about this. But at some point, you still got to let common sense step in.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I just feel like at least there was a visceral reaction. You look at the governor, you look at Abbott. I mean, that happens, and he goes to a fundraiser that night. You have him and Ted Cruz. They're still going to an NRA conference, which, by the way, there are no guns allowed there for the company that is behind the Second Amendment. Every American should be able to carry whatever they want with no background checks at all. You're not allowed to carry in this conference is very hypocritical. To me, at least Beto O'Rourke is doing something. Just the more and more that comes out, and I'm not trying to get sidetracked into the politics of it, but like, one, it keeps unfolding that the police reports, the initial reports, were totally inaccurate of what was reported to the public. The fact that they're saying that I've heard that up to 90 minutes that the shooter was shot at people outside, went inside 90 minutes in the school before they finally tried to breach the door. That kids were shot in 4 different classrooms. Like, how do you just sit out there and do nothing? This isn't a negotiation situation. This is, and to me, I picture my kids. I picture the innocence level. One of my sons just turned 1 today. So my youngest, it's his first birthday today.
Happy birthday.
My older son is 5 going on 6. So he is a bit more of a personality and like a person as far as you get to know him. And I just think about his level of innocence and his level of wonder at the world. And I think about that. It's like I don't want to think about it, but I can't not think about what those kids were going through, young kids, and that this isn't prompting a change, and there isn't just one solution. As far as I get it, that there's lots of illegal weapons that are out there already. So simply enacting tougher gun control legislation won't do away with all of the firearms, legal firearms that are out there in bad people's hands. But on the flip side, this idea that like, well, what do you do to combat it? Oh, you just need more good guys with guns it's a fabrication. And I talked last time with you about how hard it is to accept the fact that we can't always protect our loved ones and ourselves, that there's just stuff that's out of your control. And we saw in Buffalo, we've seen it many different times that just because you have someone armed on site, that doesn't ensure safety. Now, I'm not saying schools need to have very comprehensive plans for situations like this. I'm not saying that there shouldn't be but that's not enough. And there's no reason why in certain states it should be as easy as it is to buy a firearm. It's much harder to get a job working in a school in Texas, background checks, fingerprint, the waiting period than it is to buy a firearm. And there's no reason for that. There's no reason that common sense, I do not understand the logic behind like we shouldn't have common sense
you're also,
laws, background checks, waiting periods. I don't get that. Would it stop all of this? No, but we keep seeing this instance. Virginia Tech, these were people that a bunch of these that they legally bought firearms and then used them to go commit horrific acts. And would tighter restrictions solve all of this? No, there isn't one cure for it, but it certainly wouldn't hurt, and it's not going to prevent legal, law-abiding citizens from purchasing firearms. So I think
if you're mentioning the Second Amendment, right, so you're right, you have a legal right to bear arms. So is it a matter of mental health? I have no idea, because if you do a background check, have they been properly vetted? Have they been to a psychiatrist? Do you even know that part of their lives? It's tough, man.
Yeah.
And, if the stories are still coming out and they're saying now that, like you had mentioned, that the police were waiting outside.
Yeah.
What happened to protect and serve?
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly.
So,
I mean, there was some legislation passed back in 2005 that basically said that law enforcement is not legally obligated to risk their lives to protect people, which is a crazy piece of legislation. But it's also, it's come out. There are officers that were on camera that have said, yeah, we went in and got our own kids out of the building, but we didn't go and engage the shooter.
Exactly.
And it wasn't until a Border Patrol agent, who I think was off duty, arrived and he rushed in. He's the one who actually, what's being reported right now, took out the shooter. And the crazy thing is that there are all these things that were reported officially by law enforcement at the time that now the story's changing. And this is going down a whole other road, but
law enforcement never changes stories. Oh,
no. We always have to believe everything, because
of course.
And it's just crazy. It's like they said at the time there was an armed resource officer. He engaged the shooter outside. Now they're saying, oh, there wasn't one on site. They said, oh, he was only in one classroom. Now it was, oh, he was in 4 classrooms and shot. It's just, the story is ever changing. And don't get me wrong, like, there are wonderful people that are police officers out there that I know that risk their lives every day. So I'm not here slamming an entire profession, but I will never subscribe to the notion that just because someone is in law enforcement, we have to look at them as a hero, because there were plenty of non-heroic actions that occurred in Texas a few days ago by law enforcement standing around arresting parents outside because the parents were saying we're trying to just rush in and get their kids since law enforcement wasn't. You cannot tell me that those actions were heroic because it just so.
No, the heroes are at home. The heroes are the parents who are taking care of their children every day. Those are the heroes. Heroes talk to you. Heroes build you up. Heroes don't sit outside and wait for an hour while you've barricaded an idiot or a lunatic in a room with young kids.
That's the other thing they've said, that he barricaded, and now it comes out that it was just he locked the door. You know, police breach locked doors all the time.
Are you kidding me?
But it's just. My mind is so messed up from this and I just keep picturing my son and, my older son, because he's in preschool about to be going into kindergarten and it is not healthy, but I can't stop thinking about it.
You do the best you can as a parent when you can. There are no perfect parents, so we'll never get perfect children. I believe that as long as we are speaking with our kids, as long as we, and explaining to them that there is a difference between perception and reality. Perception is not reality, and anybody that says that is out of their freaking minds.
Yeah.
Okay? Because what if your perception is off? What if your first perception is wrong?
Yeah. I mean, it brings us to what the topic that we had planned for today was, which is parenthood. And we are in different spectrums, and we both have had different paths that we've followed, I think, to parenthood. But you're a great dad, and I do my best to be the best dad that I can be. I'm curious for you, what would you say about your journey through parenthood? Because number one, you have an older son, and then you have two younger daughters. There's a gap between them. So, what would you say about parenthood? Being a dad? I
would say that it never stops. You never stop being a parent. My son right now just got out of boot camp. He's in the Navy. And I still feel as though I have to speak with him as though he's my son. But I have to understand that he is a grown man, and he shouldn't have to tell me that he is. I've also got two daughters who, I want to protect, but I understand that I can only protect them so much. So my job as a father is to teach them, as young women, how young men really are. Okay, I've got to tell them the truth. I don't want anybody else speaking to them about it, because if they're going to hear truth, they're going to hear it from me. And like I said, you do the best you can when you can. It was a little different for me because I wasn't around my son when while he was in his younger years, because I was in Europe playing. And his mom, she and I divorced. So I'm a long-distance dad. So every year I had to come back and try to establish another relationship with my son. Or it was tough.
How old were you when you had your son?
24.
So you're young, and you didn't have a dad growing up. You said you never knew who your dad was.
Never knew who my father was. It's strange. I remember playing Georgetown at the Cap Center. And one of the ushers came into our locker room after the game, and he said, "Your dad's out." Like, a man who says he's your father is outside. And I think this is my junior year, and I said to him, "Look, I'm not going out there. Tell him I'm not coming." Because I didn't know who it was. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, but I had no desire to meet him. I think that was one of my regrets. I should have gone out because he had nothing to do with well, I should say I had nothing to do with the problems between he and my mom at the time. So I should have gone out there and said hello. So because of that mistake I made, now I make sure that I talk to my children as much as I possibly can.
How old were you when you and your son's mom separated? Or sorry, how old was your son?
So Junior was going on 3.
Okay.
He was going on 3, yeah.
How old were you when you had to have conversations with him about not being together with his mom?
I didn't speak to him about not being together with his mom until he came to live with me when he went to high school. As angry as I was at the time, I understood that if I ever said one disparaging word about his mom, that it was wrong.
Yeah.
And I did let him know, how I felt about it when I was older. And it was, honestly, when I look back at it, it was none of her fault. This was me not being ready. I asked for my divorce.
Yeah.
And it was me not being ready. Regardless of whether we got along or not in certain issues, that wasn't it. Things happen in marriages. But, again, I was young, but, now she and I talk on a regular because we share a love for our son and respect for each other.
Yeah, so for me, there's some similar. I was a bit older than you when I had my oldest. But me and his mom separated when, he was a baby. And I still to this day have so much internal guilt. And you're someone who doesn't have guilt. I'm Jewish, so we have lots of guilt.
Yeah, that is you're born with that, I think, right?
That is, but I do, and my guilt isn't over not being with his mom at all.
Right.
It was in everyone's best interest because we both found spouses, we both found love and really healthy, I know in my case, happy, loving relationships. Everything I see, his mom, it's the same. And it's the best situation for him to grow up in households where he sees people that are in love, that are partners, teammates. And he's never known me and his mom being together because he was so young. But I had so much guilt because when he was born, fatherhood did not come naturally to me. And I wasn't abusive, I wasn't neglectful, I wasn't cold or mean, but I didn't have a connection with him. And there are a few reasons I think that is. And so growing up different from you, I had two amazing parents. They divorced when I was in the 5th grade, so I was old enough to know what happened. But it didn't really hurt, because they were both in my life. I saw them almost 50-50, and now my son is 50-50 between me and his mom, so he's with both of us. But I talked to both my parents. Me and my dad were incredibly close, and we really didn't look alike, which is funny. My mom was a 4'11" Jewish lady, and my dad was a 6'7" lapsed Catholic. And I don't look anything like my dad, but we were incredibly close. And so I had great parents. When I was a teenager, my dad was killed in a car accident, and then shortly before my son was born, my mom was killed in a car accident. And I'd also lost my best friend to a suicide. So I'd suffered a bunch of these losses that really affected me in ways that I didn't really learn for years and years and years. And I think when my mom was then killed, years later, it's like the third one of these, unexpected. You don't get to say goodbye. You get a phone call from a number you don't recognize, and it's a hospital and all that. It was like something in my brain, I just had this disconnect. And I had a very hard time connecting with my son when he was born, like having that instant, just instinctive, like this is my world right here. And it took me about a year, I think, for things to kind of like reboot in my brain. And from then on, my son Jack he's just my best friend, man. As far as guy friends, my wife is my best friend, but Jack is everything to me. And I love being around him. I love everything I do. I'm wearing a Spider-Man shirt today because of him. I have shirts that I wear. I don't take myself seriously. All of his favorite things. He loves Spider-Man. Yeah. He's loved the Disney Cars series, so I've got a bunch of shirts from that. He loves the Avengers. Spider-Man's his guy. He usually either says I have to be Thanos or sometimes he lets me be Iron Man. So he loves, we've just done so much together over the years. He loves trains, so whenever I'm doing a video, a sports edit for stuff around town or anything, I will, if I can fit a shot of a train going by, because it works as a transitional shot, I will put that into a video that I'm doing just for my son, Like I don't really have a social life other than my wife. I don't hang out with friends, really, because I just want to spend all my time with my kids, but especially Jack because the baby Avi is he's a baby, so it's But I still, to this day, and we're talking almost 5 years later after things, I think, rebooted in my brain, have so much guilt that I didn't feel that immediate connection to him. And it's hard for me. It's a constant struggle every day to be like, you know, to just not be consumed with this guilt of like, how did I not? And so that's a challenge for me, you know. And I have stuff that I struggle with down the road. I know I'm going to have conversations with Jack at some point. He's going to ask questions about me and his mom. And he has a wonderful relationship with my wife. It's like another. He's talked about having two moms before. Mm-hmm. He loves her. She loves him. She's always viewed him as her kid. They've known each other since, you know, he was. But I know he's going to have questions, and we're going to have conversations. And I agree with you that, you know, I wouldn't ever say negative things about his mom to him, because that does no one any good. You know, that's not going to help him at all. Kids need to have love, however many homes they have. You know, if they're surrounded by love and they feel like everyone is in it together for them, mm-hmm. that's what they need. And that's what he gets from our, that's the philosophy from everything I know from both of his houses, you know. But I also have a lot of guilt in that, so when they get older, Jack loves his younger brother. Jack's a great older brother to Avi. But I worry when they get older that Jack is going to really struggle with the fact that Avi is under the same roof as me 100% of the time, and he's under the same roof as me 50% of the time. And I worry that Avi is going to struggle with the relationship that me and Jack have. You know, I love them both equally, but Jack and I have a very special relationship from the things that we had to overcome to be like this. And going through COVID together, you know, he had just started preschool, and it was his first year of preschool. He struggles with unexpected change and with transitions, and he's going to preschool and then suddenly shuts down. Mm-hmm. That was a huge challenge, man. I don't know for you with your girls what that was like. For me, that was a big challenge. Jack was with me a lot during that period, the end of the school year. You know, right. Felt like just about every day. Right. And trying to come up with stuff, because I was teaching remote. Mm-hmm. I was a teacher. Mm-hmm. So I'm teaching remote, and I've got Jack, and I'm teaching my kids on Zoom, and Jack's coming and putting his trumpet up against my head and blowing it in the middle of me teaching a lesson on ancient Egypt. Yeah. To my class, and one of the things that we found is I was living in Worcester at the time. We would go to Union Station in Worcester every single day and watch the trains, because it was something we could still do. And at the time, he had names. He learned all the different like train companies, because Worcester is kind of it is the train hub of Massachusetts. It's much more than Boston. Union Station is this beautiful train station, and it was something that we did. It was our routine every day. But that was a tough time, man. I constantly felt like I was failing as a parent, because we'd be doing one thing and then I'd be like, oh my God, but we haven't done anything academic for like most of the week other than his one Zoom class a week. Mm-hmm. And like, oh, I'm letting him down here as he develop. And so it's like, I don't know, what was that experience like for you, man, with your girls?
Again, I was raised by my grandmother, and one of her favorite saying was, it's hard, but it's fair. So I don't think we give our children enough credit for being resilient. They're much more resilient than many of us parents, I'm going to say, in general, give them credit for. Change is a part of life. Transition is a part of life. And they're better at it than we are. I mean, we feel worse about having to leave them than they do about us leaving, because they're looking for their independence. Even when they're young, they don't want you helping them stand up. No, I got it. Right. That's who they are. My daughters are both very independent. I am so happy that we can sit down in the living room and they can go upstairs and spend hours up there just drawing, reading, doing whatever they want to do, and I don't have to worry about them. You know, come down and we'll talk about it. So, you know, for me, Junior was the same way. I give him his space. You know, I mean, even when he was in college, you know, or away at the Tilton School, he didn't call me a lot, and I didn't have to call him a lot because I understood what he wanted. understood he wanted his space. I felt the same way with my grandmother. I loved her, but I was accustomed to going in my room, opening my books. There was no television in my room, so I'd go in, I'd open my books, I'd start reading, and I'd come out, we'd eat dinner or whatever, and she said, well, what'd you read? What have you learned today? Right? And that was it. And it was the best relationship because she saw me as a young man. And as a man, another saying of my grandmother was, boy, you better learn how to be a loner. Okay? And it helped me so much, especially being overseas, because you always want someone around you. It's, the environment isn't what you're accustomed to. Wasn't a problem. Was not a problem. I was fine being alone. I just figured out what was going on in their culture.
Yeah, so one, conversations with my oldest are amazing, and I can't wait to be able to have them with my youngest, where we keep thinking he's going to talk any day now. He babbles a lot. We're wondering what his first word is going to be. But
leave me alone. No.
With Jack, COVID was really tough, and I don't mean to keep harping on it, because when I say COVID was tough, I'm not here saying, oh, we should have just day one, no masks in school. No, not at all. Like, I believe in the precautions. I took it very seriously. But these are the unfortunate. There's going to be a cost. And so Jack he has a very athletic background. He had his grandfather. So I was an athlete. His mom was an athlete. Both of his grandparents were athletes. Or both of his grandfathers were athletes. Mm-hmm. He's got great-grandparents that were athletes. Very high level. His grandfather's high-level Division I professional grandparents, same. But Jack has always been very drawn to music. He's been athletically, physically gifted, but it's never really been his thing thus far. Music has been his thing. Mm-hmm. He was kind of delayed speech-wise, but he could sing from day one.
I like Jack already.
He could hear a song once, when he was like a year and a half old. And my wife picked up on this first because my wife is very musically inclined. And it's funny, her and Jack have so much in common. We joke about it all the time. But she could pick up that Jack could match pitch and cadence from day one. I took Jack when he was 3. So before COVID hit, we're talking, it was like December 2019, that 2019-2020 school year. Took him to my alma mater, to a Northeastern basketball game. Mm-hmm. And Jack was enthralled with the pep band. He didn't care about basketball. Mm-hmm. He just wanted to go back. We got him a toy trumpet. We went back. He immediately wanted to walk over to the pep band. They were like, hey, do you want to join us? That whole basketball season, we went to basically every single Northeastern home game, and every single game, Jack would just go right over to the pep band, and he would play with them. We've got videos of him. He would match their movements with a toy trumpet. So towards the end of the year, we bought him a reel. It's called a pocket trumpet. So it's brass, but it's like this big. Take a trumpet. It's kind of compacted down to like this. Comes in the mail. I take it out. I try to blow into it. I can't get it to make a noise because I have no musical ability. My wife, who's an amazing singer, she can't get it to make a noise. I didn't realize until then that a trumpet, you're not simply blowing. It's you have to vibrate your lips. And so I tell Jack, I'm like, hey, bud, this trumpet came. He's all excited. But, you might not be able to get it to make a noise for a while until you're older. He immediately can play the trumpet. He's different keys and different, and he could match the trumpet with the Northeastern pep band. And over the course of that year, he's getting posted on Twitter and stuff. And then the BU pep band's like, hey, come join us. So then we're going to Northeastern and BU games, and he's playing with them. And the BU conductor, band director, who's a professor there, was like, it shouldn't be physically possible for a 3-year-old, because Jack was 3, to be able to play a trumpet right now. Mm-hmm. They shouldn't have the lung capacity, the mouth, and he could play it. And the band was all Jack wanted.
Why not? Why would he say that? Why not?
I guess just kids are not physically, they shouldn't have the lung capacity yet at 3 to be able to make it.
Who says?
Well,
Sam.
He was just saying it he was impressed that it's like he's never known a kid that young that could play a trumpet before, which was.
We're speaking of Jack. So what that says is that, and this is the case in any kid, music is their first language.
Yeah.
It is sound. It is vibration. It's not words. We just give them definitions.
Yeah.
He told you what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
The world is built off of vibration.
And that's what, but that's what was so kind of heartbreaking to me over it, is that this was his everything. And then COVID hits right after the basketball season basically ends. It gets shut down. And then the entire next year and a half, the pep band, the first year, the pep bands at those schools are not getting together. Then the second year they reopen. And that summer, even with COVID, I should say, Jack was meeting up with the BU pep band because they were having outside performances. He had his mask. He'd pull his mask down to play. It was amazing. But then that next school year, there's no pep band at Northeastern or BU. And Jack was doing online Zoom lessons for music with the BU pep band director. I can't thank Aaron enough as the BU director for that. It was really amazing. But it wasn't... Jack was getting very frustrated, very kind of upset. He couldn't see his band friend, as he called them. And as COVID went on and on and on, he kind of got disconnected from that. He still loves music. He loves to sing. He sings everything. He's incredible musically. But he has lost that connection with the band. So this year, towards the end of the year, we finally went back to Northeastern. They finally the pep band was back together. They said he could rejoin them. We went there. But Jack did not want to go over to them. He was really upset seeing them. I don't know what his internal processing was, but it was really heartbreaking for me as a parent to have seen at such a young age this passion and this thing that he just loved to do. It's shut down. We finally go back, and he's, not feeling it. And, my hope is that it will come back in time, because he still loves music. But if not, man, it's a really great loss. My wife and I both really struggled with that when we were there, because we both just loved doing that with him. And we really struggled going there and seeing him have that reaction to it. And it was really tough, man. And that was a thing that he loved. And he doesn't like having me teach him stuff, and I don't know how to teach him music. So sports I know, but he doesn't want me teaching him stuff. I mean, I was a pretty high-level athlete, baseball player. He will not let me teach him anything. I'm like, he views me as his buddy and his dad, but he does not want me teaching him stuff.
That's right.
And music was really wonderful for me because I couldn't teach him anything. So I could just be there for the ride with him while he's doing it.
Yes. Well, kids, they come from us. They aren't us.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't want you teaching me, if I'm Jack, I don't want you teaching me music. This is, Dad, this is my voice. I got this.
Yeah.
Leave me alone, walk away, admire it.
That's really how he is.
Let me do my thing. This is what children are supposed to do.
How did you handle, because your oldest son, Junior, he was a Division I basketball player too. He's a big kid. He's not as big as you. He's probably, 6'7", 6'6", somewhere?
6'5", 6'6".
Okay,
Yep.
so he played at Rice, which is Division I school. It's not as high level as Pitt. It's but it's, to play D1, that's more than 99.99999% of high school players do.
Right.
How did you handle sports with him, and then how with your daughters now? Is it, how was it? Were you pushing them into it? How did you handle it? How did you handle that? Being, when you're as acclaimed as you are, that can be a lot of pressure on kids.
So it was absolutely a lot of pressure on my son. I remember, now parents can go on visits with their kids. I remember taking a couple of visits with him, and, the coaches, they talk about, I remember you at Pitt, great teams, blah, 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 blah. And Junior is looking at me and asking me the question, Dad, this is my visit. Why are they talking to you? And you know what I told my son? I said, look, get over it. It's not going to change, all right? You have to make your way. You are good enough for them to want to offer you a scholarship. Stop looking at me. All right? I'm not going to change what I did. I can't change what I did. I was pretty damn good. I was better than you were. All right? So, get over it, man. And he did. He found his own way. I didn't push him to play basketball. He was always into sports. He was playing football, so he had built a natural affinity for being aggressive.
Yeah.
And I love basketball players with football player attitudes. My daughters, they are unbelievably athletic. I swear I have Venus and Serena. Amanda is long, tall, athletic like her mom, and Vanessa is tall. She's got a little bit meat on her, a little bit more meat on her bones. So, and she is just as aggressive, and they are both independent thinkers, and I love that about them. They'll sit down and have a conversation with me, but I don't push them into sports. Right now with my daughters, I ask them, look, go outside and play. Go to the jungle gyms, the seesaws, the swings. Do that. There is no specialization. Now they want to start playing lacrosse and basketball, things like that. My older wants to go out and practice basketball. She wanted to work on her left hand. I said, okay, let's go. As long as she wants to do it, we'll do it. But her dream is her dream.
Yeah.
Can't be mine. And as long as she's working hard, funny story about Junior. I didn't force him to play, but basketball is it's consuming, time consuming, and sometimes we lose our way. So, especially with classes. So he's up at Tilton. He's going to kill me for telling this story, but he's up at Tilton, and I get an email that he hasn't handed in an assignment, and I just finished talking to him about it. To cross your T's, dot your I's. So I get an email, and I don't want the teachers emailing me. So I get in the car and I drive up to Tilton. I'll call the coach. Do not tell him I'm coming, but I want you to know I'm coming because I have to get in the building. All right. So I drive up and I'm fuming. I get to the school and I know he's in the gym, so I go to the gym. And they let me in, and he walks out the other way. I catch him. Oh, hey, Dad. I didn't know you were here. How you doing? So I make him go pack all his stuff. He puts it in the car. We drive all the way back home. The coach is calling me, Bobby, is he coming back? Is he coming back? And I'm like, I don't know. Because I tell him, man, you got my name, okay? People deal with me because of who I am, not because of what I did. You don't get to do this. So if you're serious about playing basketball, then you're going to have to follow up doing everything else that you need to do. Now, I eventually sent him back to Tilton, and he ended up okay. So that's my little story about that.
For me with sports, what I was very thankful for was, my dad, he introduced me to them, and he was, very, not the same level as you, but he was accomplished in his own right, Division I player. He introduced me to them, but he didn't force me into them. I just was passionate about them from day one. So I was different than my son, where that's all that I wanted to do. From the time I was a year old, I learned how to swing a little souvenir baseball bat from like a Red Sox game, a little souvenir bat. He'd pitch me tennis balls, and that's just, and then, basketball, football came next. But he never pushed me into it. It wasn't like, you have to do this. He introduced me to it, and when I got to a certain point, he let me know, look, like you're talented, but the reality is, you're 5'8" on a good day. He was about a foot taller than me. Wasn't blessed with his height.
Okay.
I like to say I'm 5'9" now. Maybe I've grown a little bit, but you're 5'8". If you want to do this, there's always someone working. You've got to go out there and you've got to be working all the time if this is what you want to do.
Right.
But he didn't force me to do it, and that was a really great thing for me because I would have gotten burnt out. And unfortunately, after he died, and my best friend died, and it was like 3 months apart, I lost that passion for a really long time. And
the passion to play.
Yeah, because I always noticed his absence after that. And I could have had a much better career and a much longer career than I had if I was still passionate about it. But my childhood, it was great. I loved it. I played it. I had the opportunity to play it at the college level. I had the opportunity to play it at the professional level after college. And all those opportunities were because of him not forcing me into it, but being real with me about what I needed to do if that's what I wanted to do. And later on, when I coached high school for a while, and I had a blast doing it, but I saw so many really talented kids get burnt out and quit the sport because their parents were overbearing and were pushing them. And you told me a quote years ago, and it has always stuck with me. And it's something that I think about with my own with Jack, and I struggle with, like, I introduce him and I'm introducing him to sports, but he's not the same as me. I think he could be a better athlete than I was, but he'd have to want to be, and he's not. It's not what he wants to do. Jack loves many things. Music. He wants to be a scientist. He loves doing science experiments. He loves animals, learning about animals. So he's got passions, and all I want is for him to be passionate. It would be really cool if he gets into sports, but whatever he's passionate about, I'm passionate about. But I go back and forth between I'd like to introduce him, but I don't want to push him into it. And I saw so many kids, talented players that I coached, get burnt out because their parents were pushing them. And I always think with him, and I think about a quote you told me years and years and years ago. And you said, you can't want it more than they do. It's not going to work if you want sports more than they do. And you were talking about players that you were coaching. But I always thought about it applies to our own kids, that, like, it's not going to work with sports if you want it more than they do. You know, you need to, they need to at some point have that internal passion, and it needs to be what they're all about, or it's not going to happen. And parents can't, you know, everybody wants to be Venus and Serena's dad or Tiger Woods' dad, you know, and be like, I, from day one, had my kid doing this. But there are so many parents out there that try to do that from day one that their kids don't. It doesn't happen because it's not just about the parent. It's also about the kid. You know, Venus and Serena wouldn't have been what they were. Tiger wouldn't have been what he was if they didn't have that combination of talent and also the mindset that this is what I'm all about, this is what I want to be. And so there are so many parents that try to, I think, do that with their kids, and they just get their kids burnt out, and it affects their relationships with them.
I think you're doing a great job getting back to Jack. You know, you had mentioned COVID, and one of the unintended consequences of COVID is that not only did people lose their jobs, lose their businesses, but a lot of people lost themselves. And Jack not being able to express himself through the band took something away from him, that self-discovery that he found out. So now, what is life? You know, are you to go through life being, you know, afraid of whatever it may be, okay, that could be harmful? Or do you live your life? This is a young life that was look, stop. Go no further. Do not pass go. Do not collect $100. Yeah. We understand you like this, but no. I mean, again, sports was put on hold, right? They showed you, look, something else is important. Life. How about that? So, you know, the ball is life thing is a falsehood. Life is life, right? There are other things important. So as long as Jack, I mean, me, myself, I didn't grow up playing sports. I grew up reading and reciting Paul Laurence Dunbar, Nikki Giovanni, Langston Hughes, reading James Baldwin. You know, this is the way I grew up. I grew up in drama class. Sports was something that I picked up.
And you organically picked that up, and it was just a passion that was there.
It's just a passion. That's it.
And if you had a parent that was forcing you into it, it might not have been the same relationship from like day one. If they were like, you're going to be a basketball player, we need 7 days a week before school, after school, like you might not have had that same passion for it.
Well, I think it's different for the kids now because what they get caught up into is the bling, the lights in front of their faces, the next highlight reel. What they don't get to do is what they don't get to experience is self-discovery, right? Because it depends on something else. I remember playing basketball, or when I picked the basketball up, people, they would always laugh and joke at me because I'm walking down the street and they hear ting, 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 ting because I had a plastic basketball. It wasn't like everybody else's, but I wanted to go to the park, and I was horrible. And my grandmother just gave me real simple advice. Play hard. That's it. Play hard. If she saw me slacking, whatever I was doing, she saw me slacking, that's not enough. You said you wanted this. So it wasn't me trying to outdo anyone else. I was just trying to find the best in myself. How good can I get? That's it. That's all.
How hard is it with Junior going into the Navy, into the armed services as a dad. You know, maybe that's an uncomfortable topic, but it's. I mean, look, we've seen, unfortunately, that danger is everywhere, but it's not like being a florist or an IT tech or something, you know?
So I will be truthful with this. I have mixed feelings. I know that this is what he wants to do because he wants to find himself. This is something he has to prove to himself. I also understand the history of our country, and I am not happy with him going and possibly killing somebody else's children. I'm stuck between the two. We watch what's going on today. Real talk, as a country, we are the biggest arms dealer on the earth.
Yeah.
So the hypocrisy in you stating to me that, plenty of children die. Well, you know what? I watch Obama, send more drones than anybody else in the history of the world.
Yeah.
Right. I understand that. Look, there's war and there are costs to war. I think Colin Powell said it best when there's war that there is no humanity. Okay, so I fluctuate. I understand the need to protect yourself, which is why I'm big on the Second Amendment. Because if there's somebody out there, if I'm without an arm, a gun, and not able to protect my children against somebody who is a nutcase, then what do? I can't wait on the police. It's going to take them too long to get there, especially in some neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Right. So, I think I'm always fluctuating between the two. There's absolutely something we can do about this, but when it happens so often, and all I hear is posturing and lip service, then what does that tell me? So, I heard this and I thought it was so apropos for this moment. The phrase was, we're a God-fearing country. Guns, oil, and drugs. When I heard that, I said, ooh. Think about that for a second.
Yeah. Sometimes it's hard, man, for me to just go to sleep at night because I worry about all the things for my kids. And once again, I come back to, I'm not going down the road of things used to be better because I have a degree in history and no, things weren't better in this country. If you were anything other than a male white Protestant, life is better now than it was during previous eras. That doesn't mean life is good.
Right.
Let alone great.
Right.
But degrees. It's better by degrees than it was before.
Yeah.
We had a lot of horrors, a lot of violence in this country. You look at the Tulsa Massacre, like the Civil War, the bloodiest war in U.S. history was the Civil War. We had the slave trade. We had slavery for 200 years. Or, I guess it was 100, a little bit from the time that, it was a little less than 100 years, but it was like our society, which began before we were a nation, slavery was going on here from 1619 to 1865. Then we had another 100 years of legal segregation and all that stuff. So we had terrible things. But it's still, the world is a dangerous, scary place. And it's like, I don't want my son to grow up scared. So I don't want him to ever see that I'm worrying about him, worrying about all these things. But it's hard to sleep at night sometimes, man. And but it's still amazing being a dad.
It's an amazing feeling being a father. Parenthood, and I don't want to separate it with gender, but the energy from a father and the energy from a mother are necessary for the child. I think that male energy, that aggressiveness is necessary for a child these days. The aggressiveness to protect yourself, not the aggressiveness to lash out. The aggressiveness to express yourself, right? And I'm not saying that, there aren't females who are, have a more aggressive nature. My grandmother had an aggressive nature, but I never knew my father. So she was my mother, my father, my grandmother, and my grandfather. She had to be everything. So being raised by a woman gave me a different perspective. I'm not saying whether it's better or it's worse. I'm saying it was different, and it was what was required. And I think that in many ways it helped me become a better father. And the lack of a father also contributed to my my lack of understanding at times. Okay.
Yeah, so me personally, I think that at the end of the day, I think what's important is that kids are surrounded by a loving environment. Doesn't matter if it's a single parent, if it's two parents, if it's just a mom, just a dad, two moms, two dads, a mom and a dad. You know, I think so many kids grow up without love and a safe household that I just think if you love your kids, that's the most important. But I you know, it's funny for me, my wife is who really made me a great dad. She helped me in ways I can't put into words as far as just healing from things that I've been through.
Yes.
and being able to really connect with the ability to just love. For me, I think with my son, with Jack, one of the big holdups in that connection from day one was I had hurt so much from losing my dad, losing my best friend, losing my mom. And I knew that if something happened to Jack, it would hurt so much more than all of those things combined, those previous losses. And so there was a subconscious fear of suffering another loss like that. But my wife, just her influence on me was
shout out to Mom.
Yeah, was life changing. But I there for me, there's been nothing like it since that wall kind of came down in my life of being a parent, being a dad. It really is. And so for me, it's just, I don't know. I don't have advice to dads out there. I don't feel like I'm an authority figure on it other than just, love your kids for who they are. And if they're passionate about something, foster that. It doesn't matter what it is. Like I said, I don't know the first thing about music, but that's what Jack was into. So I'm all in on that as far as however much he's into it.
A lot of times I think parents are the problem. I said earlier there are no perfect kids, so there can't be any perfect parents, right? But, at the end of the day, I'm with you on that the kid needs love more than anything. Our children need love. I just don't believe that love is all they need. Love has to be surrounded by other things. I think we've seen that love can, go off the rails sometime, and people fall out of love. I believe that the statistics are now that more than half of the United States ends up getting divorced.
Yeah, something
somewhere
like that.
around there, or it's close to it,
Yeah.
right? So does the love stop at that point? Well, the child may understand that, okay, my mom and dad aren't together. Well, does that mean they don't love each other?
Yeah, and I should clarify, when I say surrounded by love, I don't mean parents should stay together. What I mean is that whoever the parental figures are in these kids' lives love the kid. That's what's important, is that you love your kid. And yes, they do need more than just love. And my wife, who is full of love but also balances me out a lot on the practical stuff, on really being concerned and making sure that our kids don't grow up spoiled, that they grow up appreciative of things, all these different things that they. But when I say love, I just mean that it's so important that kids are loved for who they are by their parents, or their grandparents, or their whoever it is that is in that role of parent. So yeah, I think if they grow up and their two parents are not in love with each other, it's better for those two parents to live apart and both love their kid, because if you have two people living together who are not in love, and that can turn very poisonous very quickly. But I just mean it's so important that kids are loved, by whoever it is that are their guardians. That to me is so important.
It is. I totally agree.
Well, I think that is going to wrap up episode 3. We really appreciate everyone for joining us. Bobby, thank you so much for once again another amazing conversation.
I love our conversations, man. I'm looking forward to more.